at the birth of him who is called the bright and morning star, and a major city yet to be determined in Russia. On the covenant path. This is not the church of Joseph Smith. At the birth of him who is called the bright and morning star,
Travis Wayne Goodsell. For the past several months, you've probably seen up in this location DVDs as I was converting them to digital while doing videos. And so I obviously watch them once they're digitized. And I'm currently watching Castle. I'm on season 3, and I got to the point where the Flashdance girl, he's a dream, Maniac, and one other good one from that movie, is a CIA agent in the show. And what came up was that they were looking for a man who had helped the CIA with a theory he had as to enemy nations and such, using what he calls a linchpin theory, that the enemy takes out one individual person, and just like a domino, the rest falls. And when I heard linchpin, all of a sudden, because if you haven't been paying to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Nelson has been taking Mormons on a hinge-pointing journey. If you're unfamiliar with a hinge point, Nelson uses it for medical profession, but it's also used for carpentry, such as in doors. If you go to your door, you'll see the hinges on the door have hinge pins that keep the door up so that you can swing it and close it and lock it and whatever. But if you take out the hinge pin, door collapses, fails, and it's no longer workable. And thus the hinge pin theory with Castle is that you take out one individual from the equation, and the whole thing collapses. And the show was trying to destroy the world with World War III. Isn't it interesting how Trump has been doing that to us this whole time? That was the word I was looking for. He calls it, his people call it, Junior titled his book after it, triggering. It's where they spew out abuse, accusations, hoping to get an emotional response from the other person. And in so doing, that person triggers not just an emotional response, but they do something big. And what Trump has been trying to do during his presidency is cause a civil war. When North Carolina, the white supremacist march, the guy runs down a protester of white supremacy with his car. Trump says, "There's good people on both sides." He was trying to trigger an angry response from Democrats. so that Democrats would rise up in violence over this. Democrats have never done it. It's just not in their nature. But now, this year, even though white supremacy has been triggered, as white supremacist violence has skyrocketed in the United States, this year he's actually getting the regular people triggered, getting them more angry, and are now trying to overthrow America. As the one Texas guy is saying, hey, I need a pardon for this investigation that I'm being investigated for criminal action. So let's file a lawsuit against those 4 states to get Trump's attention. And he was able to get 17 other states' attorney generals to sign off with that lawsuit, Utah being one of them. And then over 126 or so GOP House representatives. And so what he's trying to do is trigger a civil war to overthrow the election, to get Trump's attention, and if it fails, maybe Trump will pardon him before he leaves office. But Trump's not going to leave office. He needs a triggering hinge point linchpin event to save him. He needs a 9/11 to save him, because this coronavirus, with all the Americans who are dying, who are struggling financially, they still will not rise up for a civil war. America is just too apathetic, and not even Trigger Trump is able to find the linchpin of America to start the Civil War. And even though he called for, after the Supreme Court refused him, Trump called, the guys he said stand back and stand by, well, he activated them in his tweet. But I'm still not seeing anything in the news about it. So they apparently missed it. But Trump's calling for it. He's calling for a civil war. And I've been doing today the scenarios for what will happen with the Union of States, as the Texas guy, after losing, went on social media as well and posted to everybody who supports him to form a Union of States, which is a Civil War term, but they were the good guys in the Civil War. He's now trying to flip it, as he's Confederate, wanting to call himself Union. And so with the church this whole time too, they've been triggering Mormons. And Mormons are so blindly devoted dogmatically to the prophets that they're just agreeing with whatever he's doing and calling it revelation from God. As he has taken away the high priesthood and making it only for leaders of the church, has taken away home teaching so that nobody could communicate in a chain to make sure everybody's safe during this coronavirus. He brought an idol god to conference. This is April. And then for the Christmas devotional, came right out and said Lucifer is his god. And Mormons still don't see it. But he also brought up hinge pointing. And so everybody was going off on this hinge pointing. I can only find Elder Razban's BYU devotional talk a year ago. Rome, a hinge point in history. And as a result, nobody catches on to what's going on, because they don't understand that a hinge point requires a hinge pin to make the transition. And I've done the clip where Nelson says, "This is not the Church of Joseph Smith." And even though he was talking in the concept of the Book of Mormon, his use of it and looking into the camera with all the other things he's doing, this is how he's able to sneak it by Mormons. Little by little, he turns up the heat as the Mormon frogs are being boiled. Now, if you don't understand that metaphor, or if you do understand that metaphor, you'll also hopefully, well, I'm going to tell you now, if you don't know about it, it's in Revelation. Last days. The dragon, the beast, and the false prophet are referred to as frogs. Isn't that interesting? But since Nelson took over, he has been gutting the church, and Mormons are clueless. As I've been screaming, "Hey, nobody's listening." As YouTube is helping with this censorship, with their analytical programs. And it's necessary to understand something else about Linch pins that's similar to hinge pointing, because a hinge pin is just without the extra ring clasp to hold it in place. See, the doors, you put it in the up above, and it has the top thing that keeps it from falling right straight down to the ground through gravity. Whereas a linch pin has a little clasp so that you can stick it in sideways or stick it in even upside down, because that linch pin or the clasp, extra clasp, will keep it in place. And so they're similar in that concept. But a linch pin is also, let's get the general definition for you here. When an entire concept or operation hinges on a single element, we call that element a linchpin. And so a linchpin is not necessarily for doors. It's also referred to in mafia terminology. And when you understand an operational organization of a mafia, the example that I'm using from here, it's called writingexplained.org, and under the concept of linchpin or linchpin difference, they use as one of their examples the police saw underboss, has to do with the mafia, Salvatore Gravano, as the linchpin around which their systematic dismantling of the Italian mafia was centered. So this is what the police in this particular case were doing. They were thinking in terms of the linchpin theory that Castle was going over. And they believed that if they took out the underboss, that the mafia, the Italian mafia, would be dismantled. The church is set up exactly like a mafia organization. It has a president, or the boss. He has two counselors rather than just one counselor, as the mafia has just one counselor. And then there's the underboss. In the church, it's set up for the president of the Quorum of the 12 since 1923. And it was Brigham Young who led to that. As right before he died, he rearranged the presidency for that purpose. And the reason why he has it set up that way is because he can't do what Joseph Smith ordered in the Doctrine and Covenants, section 107, verse 22. Because if he did that, which is how he himself became president of his missionary traveling Quorum of 12, notice I worded it differently than just saying Quorum of 12. Brigham Young changed that. Is that they voted, after they chased out Thomas B. Marsh from the presidency, from being president, they held the proper vote as Joseph Smith said is to be done. Each quorum votes for who is to be their president from within the quorum, and they voted for Brigham Young. And so when Joseph Smith is assassinated, there is no Melchizedek priesthood meeting to vote for the full presidency. Brigham Young, Sidney Rigdon, and Lucy Mack are the only speakers at a general conference. And then after that, people chose to follow who they chose to follow. And Brigham Young tried to extort and bribe and such people to join him and go with him into the desert of Utah, which was not Utah, it was Mexico territory at the time, so Salt Lake. And so he had to change the organizational structure to justify what he did to become the president of the whole church that followed him. And that led to the church embracing mafia practices, organization, etc. And so when Nelson gets up and says, we're hinge pointing, this is not the Church of Joseph Smith, takes away the high priesthood, changes the temple ceremony, and the law of chastity is reworded to no longer require a legally and lawfully wedded marriage according to the laws of the land, but according to the law of God, which Brigham Young, section 132, is still the law of God regarding marriage. Not Joseph Smith's chapter on marriage that was removed by Brigham Young, not section 131, which Joseph Smith was talking to a single couple, one man, one woman, and saying, hey, when you get sealed in the temple, you will be exalted. Yeah, that was gutted from section 131. You won't find it in our current canon scripture. You have to go to the Joseph Smith papers. And so when Nelson changes it to the law of God, He's referring to polygamy. 10 virgins. And he shuts down Temple Square for 4 years to be reopened on the weekend, which we're expecting a dedication ceremony on 6 April 2024. Unless he decides that he's accomplished his means and pushes the date to May 1st. If you've been paying attention to my videos, Nauvoo Temple was dedicated on May 1st. And Brigham Young lost a number of followers as a result of that move. And so Nelson himself has been pulling the same exact stunt that Trump has been doing to America. And like Trump's followers, Mormons likewise are not being triggered. When the whistleblower about the $100 billion from Ensign Peak Associates came out, he informed us that the amount of interest for $100 billion is $7 billion a year. And he says that is the amount that is taken in tithing, from which 10% was invested to reach this $100 billion. That's just the interest from the $100 billion now. The church no longer needs people to pay tithing, but they're still collecting, of course. They want as much money as they can, which is why they reopened the church too early with this coronavirus, so that the church can continue to receive more money before everyone dies and the Civil War begins. The map I showed you, they're hoping, they're planning, it's plotted, it's the conspiracy that Utah and these group of union of states will emerge victorious by 2024, such that if they're not victorious in taking over the whole nation, they will at least have divided America into those 18 states that I've been going over with you, that you've been hearing about in the news. Such that under such conditions, Utah will then be free to set their own laws. What are those laws? Polygamy. And the church will just call it the Kingdom of Zion here in Utah, with the rededication of the Salt Lake Temple, with the inverted pentagram, the doctrine of Lucifer to take away agency. Because Mormons don't understand. They think that being forced to wear masks is taking away their agency. Being forced to stay at home is taking away their agency. What they don't understand is that this virus has spread and escalated because of Nelson. He took away our agency, forcing us into this crisis. And he's a medical doctor, which means it's aggravated. He knew what to do. Herbert knew what to do. He set it all up. He had a task force. He had other groups to take care of things once it began here in Utah. But when it first case came, the people that brought him in were not properly protected. They needed hazmat suits. And instead they got infected, they began spreading it. Herbert did not close the borders of Utah to keep others out. As a result, people came into Utah with the virus and also helped to spread it that way. Herbert also refused to have those who test positive quarantined. Only those who are having trouble breathing are hospitalized. The rest, it was an on your honor system to stay home and stay safe. We have over 50,000 Utahns who have tested positive, who are still positive, who are wandering around, infecting other people. This is never going to go away because of that. This is why it's spread and escalated. I have reviewed the stats that I've been keeping track of, if you've been paying attention. I've kept a binder. I've created spreadsheets to track the stats. We'll just do a quick thing. I've got to do it tonight anyway. But you guys have seen me with this, because I've been doing it all. I even have the backside for the unemployment. It's frustrating being the one who sees what's going on, who sees the destruction of our nation, when nobody else sees it. Nobody knows what to look for. As Nelson himself calls himself the Mafia, calls himself follower of Lucifer, presents an idol god for Mormons, takes away the high priesthood, which means taking away exaltation for Mormons, and is setting things up for polygamy. And yes, slavery. This coronavirus is racist if it had sentient knowledge, because it targets those who are colored. And the reason why is because those who are colored have poor health care. So they're not able to get to the hospitals. So that is very frustrating. So, yeah, I was doing research on this and trying to find a video of one of the conference speakers talking about it, but couldn't find it on YouTube. Apparently no Mormon is that loyal to the church to cover it. So I'd have to go back to the conferences that I digitized for Russ and see if I can find them. But came across Gospel Lessons. What do you mean, blown away at 17? Yeah, he did a video 2 months ago, and I'm just now seeing it. Revelation 12, sign on September 23rd, 2017, is not what we thought. You will be blown away at 17 minutes. It's a 31 minutes 57 second video. So yeah, I'll check it out, I guess, but I'm pretty sure he's got it wrong. It's the sign of the Son of Man. And this is why the enemy is doing what they're doing, fulfilling biblical prophecy. Is it's their intention. And Albert Pike, in his letter to Giuseppe Mazzini, tells us exactly what they're doing. They're going to destroy religion and elevate the doctrine of Lucifer in its place. And so in order to do that, they've got to crush the belief systems of all religious people. How do you do that? Well, the last days, everybody's looking for Jesus to come flying out of the sky on Pegasus. They know very well it ain't going to happen. There is no second coming. They all know this, and they're going to exploit this. And when no Jesus comes flying out of heaven on a Pegasus horse from outer space, without a spacesuit, and a horse without a spacesuit, all of Christianity will be devastated. Their hope crushed, realizing that they've spent their whole lives believing in a lie. And then the enemy comes forward and says, "Oh, religion betrayed you. We will take care of you now. This is what you must do." Doctrine of Lucifer. And the church has already been doing it. And so it's not going to be as blatant at first. It'll take time. But eventually, I don't know how many years in the future after 2024 they'll be so brazen. I mean, he came right out and said, it's Lucifer. He's our God. He presented an idol in conference. So yeah, he's very brazen about this. It won't take Mormons long to call their God Lucifer. But the Book of Mormon gave us this sign also. And I'm willing to bet Gospel Lessons doesn't recognize it comes from the Book of Mormon. But that's another video. So, be prepared. It's going to get ugly. And they will distract you so that when it's all said and done, you're going, how did we get here? What happened? They don't want you to know that they caused this. They want you to blame other things, other people. And that's what's so scary. So beware of the hinge pointing of the LDS Church. I just found out what his blown away revelation for Revelation 12, the sign is supposed to be for. He claims it's when the plates are brought forth. So he's claiming the plates are here. I haven't seen the whole thing as to how. I'm the one who revealed it to you guys. He's not talking about me. So I'm kind of confused. Is he thinking it's in secret and that the prophets are working on it and then we'll bring it out in some future time? Because this video is in 2020. It's been 3 years already. How long does it take them to translate? So, yeah, I just thought I'd share that with you, so because I'm not going to link you to this video.